Guess who got brands talking? Brandlife.co.za.
A very good afternoon. It is 5 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, and you're on Brand Live Online Radio. My name is Errol Felix, and I'd like to welcome you to Green4Life. It is my half an hour slot, 5 o'clock to 5:30 on Wednesday afternoons, and it will have a very distinct environmental flavor. Just a little bit of background on myself. I have a 30-year involvement with television, having been at the SABC for about 15 years. And post the SABC, I resigned in 96 and then still continued, where I spent about 24 years from 1985 until about 2008 with the environmental program called 50/50. I was a presenter, producer, specialist producer. I'm also a cameraman, and I've sort of covered all of the other disciplines of television, where I've also then trained young people. Matters environmental, however, has always been a part of my life. I can safely say, since the time that I opened my eyes, I was born in Port Elizabeth, and very interestingly, someone asked me, because most of my life I spent in the townships. Last was in Manenberg in Cape Town, and people said, "But I don't understand. If you grew up mostly in townships, why would you be interested in conservation, plants and animals, environmental matters?" But very interestingly, when I thought about it, everywhere we stayed, from Port Elizabeth right through till about 5-6 places in Cape Town, including Manenberg, we were either the first or the last house in the area, which means opposite us there was always an open field or bush or piece of forest, etc. And that is where I found myself most of the time. After school, that's where we got together. Even up till matric, I would walk from school to my gran and then cross this massive field to get home to where my mom stayed. And most of the time, I would just sit on a tree trunk and watch water birds. This was also where I saw my first wood hoopoe, where I saw my first blacksmith plover, and realized there was a reason why this bird was swooping down on me all the time, making this weird chirping sound. And then suddenly I realized if I moved a little bit to the left, for example, he would move closer to me, making a hell of a noise. If I moved a little to the right, he would be quiet. And then I realized, oopsie, there's got to be something on the ground here. And lo and behold, the day I saw the first blacksmith plover chick just quietly laying on the ground, almost not breathing, I became interested in this cycle of life and what was happening, how this mother was wanting to protect her baby, her chicks. And for me, the wonder of life, the spring hares that I'd seen, the little diving ducks, moor hens, frogs, etc., it got me to understand that there was more to life than the life that was presented to us in the townships. And that is where then my interest in nature and ultimately in matters environmental it came from. One of the big things for me would be to unpack the kind of topics that we'd be discussing. Today, unfortunately, I will not have a guest, but that is what the endeavor will be, to every week have one or two guests on the show that we'd either regard as experts or people, whether they be government employees or people from companies, etc., that would in some way either answer questions or unpack what it is that is happening out there in the world, depending on the particular topic of the day. Bearing in mind that this is Brand Live Online Radio, so very, very important for brands, for companies, small companies especially, to come and showcase their brands. Even if you have green products, and we know that there are thousands of people out there that have developed green products that they'd like to expose. This I saw many, many times on 50/50, and we'd like to invite people to come into studio to unpack that. In terms of my particular view, and please understand that I am by no means an expert, neither do I regard myself as an expert. But over the last 30 years, 31 years being involved with environmental matters, obviously there's some things that rub off on you, there's some things that you continue to sort of study further, that you begin to get an interest in. And that is the people seem to throw the term conservation versus the term environment. And for me, I'd like to sort of unpack that understanding, because for me, environment equals life. And when I talk about life, I mean the life cycle of a human being, from the time that the child is separated from its mother, and it's now on its own, becoming aware of the world around it. So there are various stages in that process. And from an environmental perspective, the exact same thing happens. So you have an awareness first as a child, and then you have an awareness about matters environmental, or the environment, which means everything that is natural happening around you, and anything and everything that is connected to that. So the first step is then to become aware. The next step, obviously, as you the child now becomes a toddler, it now starts to participate in the world. It starts walking around, it starts touching and taking and opening up its awareness of what this world is all about. So as it grows more, it starts utilizing and making use of this earth. Same with the environmental equation. After the awareness, we start making use of, we start using, whether it's plants, trees, food, animals, whether we look at weather patterns, and we start understanding how it is that humans would in some way either benefit or could make something, construct something that would protect themselves from elements or climatic conditions, etc. So that is then the use aspect of it. After awareness, we then start utilization of what is around us. Inevitably, because we are humans, because there are so many of us, and sometimes so many of us in any one particular situation, it means that the need is greater in that particular time. And what is that need? Sometimes it's just a need for firewood. That means that the little forest where a lot of people find themselves will soon start to become depleted. And that means that we then have to start looking at different aspects of how that has affected us. Right now, we're going to take a short break, and we'd like to continue along this train as soon as we come back.
Making a bold statement yet blending into the surrounding suburbs of Melville, 27 Boxes is a realization of edgy design and practical implementation. A radical departure from the shopping malls of our generation, yet not a return to the high streets of our youth. 27 Boxes showcases the best of a shopping centre set in a garden, surrounded by the bohemian suburb that is Melville. 27 Boxes, shop, play, eat.
And we're back on Green4Life. If you've just joined, welcome. Green4Life is an environmental show that will feature on Wednesdays from 5 till 5:30 on Brand Live online radio. I'm your host, Errol Felix, and just before the break, we were trying to unpack the environmental equation. We spoke about the first pillar of environment, which is awareness. The second one is utilization. The third one is what I'd like to call overuse or overutilization, is where as humans we take too much, we use too much. As a result, that causes a kind of hole in the system. It causes a need, it causes extinction, it causes eradication. And the next step is where I place conservation. Conservation for me is the plaster. What really means is now that we've overutilized, now that we've taken too much, we start realizing, oh my goodness, we will not have any of this left if we continue with the path that we're on. Let's talk about poaching. Right now, rhino poaching is quite rife, not to mention ivory. But in this case, let's stick to rhino poaching. We have literally hundreds, up to 1,000 rhinos have been killed just for their horns in 1 year. Now that is a heavy amount of rhinos that are killed. And almost every time you see this massive animal that has been living for up to between 35 to 60 years on this planet, being killed for its horn, and it's left there to die. What we have to realize is that there are a scant couple of thousand of rhinos left in our country, especially the endangered black rhino. And unless the poaching is curbed, unless it is stopped, then what we will see at some point is within our lifetime, that means within the next 10 to 20 years, we will probably not have any more rhinos left in South Africa. And that has to be seen as a tragedy. And that is what I then call overuse. And the next step is where the conservation comes in, which is the plaster, which says, people, we are going to lose what it is that we have. How do we put measures in place that will ensure that our children and their children, generations after that, will still be able to see these majestic creatures in the wild and not stuck in some zoo or in some game reserve in a captive bred area where it's the only place. They're being guarded 24 hours a day by guards with guns to ensure that they are not being taken out. The next step in the environmental equation for me is sustainable living. And that says that once we've moved in some way beyond conservation, when we've gotten to a place where human beings are everyone so tuned in and in harmony with their environment and other environments and nature and animals, whether on land or marine animals. We are so tuned in that we don't have a need for poaching anymore. We understand. Therefore, we've moved on from an aspect of conservation, though we have to understand probably that conservation will be there in some way. There will always be a need for conservation organizations to take care of. And one of those reasons is mostly because the habitat of a large number of our wild animals are being encroached upon. And most of that is for the use of humans. It's for development from a property perspective. And right now on the news, we are hearing more and more how people are more and more requiring land. So land currently for food security and land for people to be able to live on. And that means that by necessity, it is going to encroach upon land required for animals. And a lot of animals, we have to understand, need kilometers in terms of the range that they travel. Look at elephants, look at wild dogs, etc. These guys move, cheetahs, they require a wide range because you also have to look at who their competition is. And by necessity, they live many kilometers apart in terms of the various packs, especially when we start talking about wild dogs. Elephants, we know, certainly don't recognize borders and fences, many examples of where they've just trampled, sometimes even electric fences to keep them in because of their migratory routes. Case in point is the Transfrontier National Parks that are now trying to be established because we're trying to drop the borders, especially in the northeastern of our country where we border Mozambique as well as Zimbabwe, and then also on the west of the country between Namibia, Zimbabwe and Angola, where elephants specifically move across these borders and they move from one country into the other because that is a part of their migratory routes, and they certainly don't recognize borders. So always, as I said, there will always be a need for conservation. Sustainable living, of course, when we start unpacking the term sustainability, what does it mean? Basically, it means that we should be living today in a manner that our future generations would also be able to participate and utilize what it is that we have today from the aspect of nature. Now, there are very key aspects to that is threatening quite a lot of things. Firstly, if we look at the climate change that has been happening in our country, it's worldwide, global warming, the greenhouse effect, looking at how carbon dioxide and methane gases are being pumped into the air, into the atmosphere, the hole in the ozone layer, etc. So we are ultimately, as humans, we are busy affecting our climate. We are busy looking and suffering ultimately the causes of that. It is no, what does one call it? It is no secret that climate change and global warming is happening. And as humans, we are definitely going to start feeling the results of that very, very soon. The last floods we had over the past couple of days, some lives have been lost, houses were lost, we had a couple of tornadoes. Yes, we understand that social media especially and technology has suddenly made the measurement and the recording of what has probably been happening for many, many centuries. Certainly, we've allowed it to happen. However, the part that humans are playing in helping to change things against our favor is certainly big. Well, we're coming back after a short break when we'll continue with the final aspect that I see of what is the environmental equation.
If you're looking for an information technology and communication solution company suitable for your small or medium-sized enterprise, then look no further than Hive ICT. They aim to provide SMEs with the same level of service expected by large corporations without sacrificing the personal relationship they have with their customers. Offering remote and on-site support, as well as IT system design, network design and installations, server and workstation maintenance, and web design, web application development, and more. Visit www.hiveict.com right away.
And welcome back to Green4Life, the environmental program that will feature on Wednesday afternoons, 5 o'clock till 5:30 on Brand Live online radio. If you're stuck somewhere out there in traffic and you're frustrated, don't know what to do, well, what I'd like to say is now you understand what a captive bred animal is feeling. My name is Errol Felix, and I'll be your host on Green4Life, which is an environmental program that will feature, as I said, on Wednesdays, 5 till 5:30. I was busy unpacking the various aspects or pillars of the concept environment, and the last one I see as enlightenment. Let's go through them again. We have awareness, utilization, overutilization, conservation, sustainable living, and enlightenment. Enlightenment is that beautiful part where a human being has gone through the various phases of seeing and understanding the environment, nature, and in some way now has even participated via various conservation means to be part of that and to help save this beautiful planet from all of the threats, whether they be man-made or completely natural. And that part of enlightenment, and I meant to say part, we can also talk about the path to enlightenment. But what enlightenment means for me is that we completely and fully understand what caring for matters natural, caring for nature, all aspects of nature, not just plants and animals, but all aspects of environment. We have the seas, we have the sky, we have the cosmic environment. We even have what I call a spiritual environment, where we look into ourselves to find out whether we are in tune with other beings that exist around us, that we coexist with on this fragile planet. And that then I see as basically the end of the cycle. After enlightenment, it is the start again of birth, or the rebirth, which is then awareness. And for me, I equate then the environmental cycle to the cycle of life, as opposed to talking about conservation, which, as I indicated earlier, is really for me just a plaster. It is a measure by which humans are saying something wrong is happening with either a natural environment or with plants or animals, and we need to do something to help protect, to help save, and ultimately to help make people aware of it. I mentioned earlier that I'm certainly not an expert. For me, it will really just be about discussing various issues. Some of those issues, for instance, we have been in about 4, 5, 6 of our provinces, we now have almost emergency situations regarding water scarcity and how we should be using water. Many years ago, about 20 years ago, there was a warning that by 2025, wars are going to be fought about water. There was even statements made that water will be referred to as white gold. And that is very, very interesting. And we're starting to see the impacts of that already. Certainly when you start looking at the numbers in terms of millimeters of rain that we've had the last couple of days, some people are apt to say, what do you mean we're a water scarce country? Look at all of this water. Unfortunately, there was a term connected to that, and that was flash floods. So basically it was really just flashes of heavy rain that were falling based on certain conditions. Also remembering that we are in an El Nino effect at the moment. Everyone remembers El Nino when we started to become aware of that there are climatic changes happening in our country, and the El Nino effect is certainly one of them. So predictions are that next year we'll start to be moving out of the El Nino effect. We'll be moving in the El Niña effect, and that things will start going better until the cycle then repeats itself. On the other side, in terms of climate change, there are also talks that South Africa is starting to dry out from the west, that we will, within a period, start seeing desertification from the western parts of the country. There's been talks that the wheat belt on the Western Cape, around the Malmesbury area, as well as the major wine farms in that area, will be starting to look at what are the next options. How do we mitigate desertification if it starts drying out from the west of the country? I certainly hope that I won't be around in terms of witnessing that. However, the important thing is that we start looking at how do we fix how do we start looking at, how do we have a 20, 30, 40, 50-year vision that if these things should happen, how do we start turning it around so that we can then adhere to the term sustainability, which means that future generations would then be able to live in a manner that they would be able to provide for the generations that come after that. Well, this then marks the end of my half an hour. I hope you've in some way been entertained, and I'm looking forward to chatting to you again next Wednesday, 5 to 5:30 on Brand Live online radio, Green4Life. I'm Errol Felix, signing out.
Have you ever thought of the power of talk radio and what it can do for your business? Well, brandlive.co.za has been developed with that in mind and brings you an international first. The brandlive.co.za internet radio platform gives businesses a new voice and opportunity to change the conventional communication platform that a newsletter represents. Facilitated by leading industry experts, the brandlive.co.za platform offers a high-quality digital talk radio medium for companies to communicate their new developments, create customer-centric radio content, develop an added value in terms of client relations, and create a better flow in terms of feedback and interactivity to their existing customer base and market. Simultaneously, the platform can also open a brand or business to a new group of potential customers. Technology is constantly shaping the way we communicate and consume information, which presents your business with a simple and affordable way to address your customer or client in a modern, multifaceted setting. Internet radio is now available for your business, a powerful corporate branded tool to complement your existing communication platforms. In today's competitive market, you need to use every tool available to retain and cultivate loyal customers. Online corporate branded radio offers you an exciting range of communication tools uniquely tailored to your brand and addressing your communication challenges. With the brandlive.co.za radio platform, you have the power to brand your business in the way you like. You are able to develop content with your own production team and have the opportunity to interact with your customers in real time on issues such as quality assurance, customer service, and any other operational matters. Brandlive.co.za. Now your brand has a voice.
I'm not perfect. I have seen it all. The pressure of losing what you worked for. What went wrong? Somebody give me a reason. 'Cause I'm not that strong. I'm sure you see it. Save me now. I cannot hide. Hear me cry. Save me now. I cannot hide. Hear me cry. I'm I scream every night, saying what the hell is going on? Feel the pressure of your muscles, yeah, they're so strong. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't